Comstock law is still old in the books that essentially bans transport of any abortion-related material. I mean, the issue here is that Republicans don't actually care about banning abortion, right? Like they've used it as a carrot on a stick for a certain demographic of their voting base for a while now. Now that they've gotten rid of Roe v. Wade, it's actually a huge political detriment to them. It's actually hurting them quite a bit. They could just end democracy, and after they end democracy, they wouldn't need to take advantage of some kind of like Comstock loophole. They could just do whatever they want, you know? I don't know, maybe. Here's it from the New York Times. Trump allies plan new sweeping abortion restrictions, a long dormant law from 1873. Maybe. I don't know. It really depends on like, if democracy ends, democracy ends. Sorry, that's how it is. Past that point, all you're really doing by banning abortion nationwide is sort of fomenting a resistance. Vosh that ignores that most Republican state politicians are ideologues. Yeah, but we're talking about federal law right now. I don't know, Vosh. I think your average Republican sincerely doesn't like abortion for misogynistic reasons. I mean, they like the idea of keeping women controlled, sure. I don't doubt that, or I don't deny that. I guess I just don't see the relevance of this. It seems like if Trump wins, we're kind of anyway. I don't know why they'd use the Comstock loophole, I guess. Even if Trump wins, they still need to use the law to enact their fascism. Well, yeah, but they could just pass a law, not if you can just pass a law, you can just pass a law. El Take Vosh, right now, core voter base, evangelical. Pandering is extremely important for GOP to keep the voting motivation high for the elections. Yeah, but that doesn't have any relevance to their ability to actually get it done after the fact. That would just be a promise they make. Secondly, I think the evangelicals are a pretty well-kept demographic. You know, I don't think they're going to swap over to supporting Biden. The plan is more if they lose, they use the Supreme Court to push it through and hope they hold a big enough majority in the House to hold off a bill that overturns it. Honestly, fuck it. Go for it. Yeah. Do you have any idea how overwhelming the Democrat victory would be in 2028 if they lose in 2024 and then ban abortion nationwide through Supreme Court? Do you have any idea how overwhelming the wave of Dem support do? Fuck it. I'll just do anal until 2028. Okay, sure. I'm not getting any bitches pregnant. No oopsie babies. Yeah, do it. Ban abortion altogether. We'll see how it goes. What if they ban lube too? They can't ban WD-40. You jest, but there's probably a Democratic strategist that unironically pitched this. I'm not jesting at all. Democrats have been like gloating behind the scenes for since Roe v. Wade was overturned, you know? Like, it's very obviously not to the electoral benefit of the Democrats. I think a lot of you guys don't really understand what the Republicans are up against here and what they're trying to do. Fascism is, in a dialectical sense, loaded with internal contradictions that aren't going to be resolved, because if you resolve those contradictions, it wouldn't be fascism anymore, or the resolutions just collapse the state. There are lots of things fascists say they want, but don't actually want. You know, fascism can perpetuate itself best in conflict because conflict seems to justify a lot of the more extreme things the state asks of you in a fascist system. America is not at war, at least not in any kind of conflict that directly threatens us. There's no like equal conflict here. But the problem ultimately that the Republicans are facing, and the problem I don't think they have a solution to, is that the average Republican is nowhere near as radical as the people they vote for. There is a very small group of Republicans, Tea Party types and onwards, who have had a lot of influence in how the party has been shaped. But most Republicans are just dumb animals who vote for the candidates they're told to vote for and are, in ideology, nowhere near as radical as you would think just based on who they vote for. If you ask any Republican, polling data, right? What do you support? How do you feel about trans people, gay marriage, bloody, 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 blah? The majority of Republican voters, I bet, don't think you can change your gender, but they don't think that every trans person is like a threat or a groomer. But look at the coverage of trans people in conservative media. All of them talk about trans people like they're groomers and degenerates, you know? The pundits and politicians are a lot more radical, and that's not surprising, because who do you think listens to the politicians and the pundits? Do you think the average Republican goes up and watches Michael Knowles or Matt Walsh? No, God no. The kinds of people who go online to consume political content from pundits, not your average person. The closest you're going to get to normie core political opinions is through Fox News. And even on Fox News, an unrepentant fascist like Tucker Carlson has to dog whistle constantly, can't get away with a lot of the more direct or overt stuff. That's why he had that affect when he spoke, right? Tucker Carlson said a lot of monstrous shit, even on Fox News. But keep in mind, even as the most popular pundit in America, he had to dog whistle constantly. Most people don't pick up on those dog whistles. And he didn't get anywhere near a majority of the Republican voter base in his audience. He was the most popular. How many people were tuning into his show? What was it? Was it like a few million during the best years? At the height of his popularity, around 4 million viewers a night. Now, don't get me wrong. That is a lot of people. But that's also probably in the ballpark of maybe 10% of people who who voted for Donald Trump, you know? Not just the 4.3 million who watched him that night, but like people who cycle in and out. And a lot of people, you know, because he's cable TV, they put him on and they just like leave him on the TV, you know, they just keep the TV on. The point that I'm getting at here is that as difficult as it may be to accept, and in spite of everything, a lot of Republicans are just not that radical. There are a lot of Republicans who are racist, are homophobic, are transphobic, but you could go and talk to them as a black person or a brown person or a gay person or a trans person, and a lot of them would be bigoted, sure. But a lot of them would also have a weirdly laissez-faire attitude towards you specifically, because really, they may be stupidly moved about through dog whistles and general statements made by pundits or politicians. They might abstractly fear the border or MS-13 or trans groomers, but these are political abstractions. In a real and direct interpersonal sense, a lot of these voters are just a lot more chill than you would think. Again, not trying to defend them. Like I said, dumb animals is a compliment because the other bad thing they could be is maliciously fascist, right? I'm being charitable here with the dumb animal bit, you know? The problem here is that the Republican Party is controlled and funded by the more radical lunatics, and there are limits to how far you can push the disproportionately chill conservative and independent base in this country when you're making an effort to cater to the interests of the radicals. There are limits to that. We're already seeing it with Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade has gotten revoked. You want to take, here, I'll do it once more. I've done this before. I'll do it again. Hold on. Majority of public disapproves of Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. This was something Republicans have been promising to do for nearly half a century. Nearly half a century for Republicans to get everyone on their side, and they couldn't. Insane. Like, seriously, look, and that was after the Roe v. Wade decision, by the way. Depending on the exact wording, you can see varying levels of support for some level of legal abortion, even in red states. Remember Kansas? Remember Kansas trying to have a referendum to make it legal within the state constitution to ban abortion, and the people in Kansas voted against that change because even deep red Kansas wanted to keep that? Exactly, Annie. This is a situation where fighting for a ban for abortion was more politically effective than actually banning abortion. Then what's driving it so hard if not even their constituents agree with it? The radicals. The Republican Party is led and controlled by disproportionately radical far-right people. You know, they have the opposite thing going on to the Democrats. The average Democrat voter is in a lot of ways to the left of the constituents they voted to office. Liberals in office are more moderate than a lot of the people who vote for them. And you have the opposite effect with the Republicans, where the average Republican who gets elected in might be significantly more radical than the people who vote them in. So with all of this being said, people keep asking me, do you think they'll do this? Do you think Trump will ban abortion? Do you think this? I think that even in the worst case scenario, where Trump wins legitimately and starts dismantling democracy, I think a lot of what he would do afterwards would be so incredibly unpopular that it would actually end up fracturing the GOP base. I'm not saying it would be a painless process, and I'm not saying it's guaranteed. I'm saying that anything he did would immediately ostracize a majority of the country, acting as an open and unambiguous authoritarian, for one. And for two, a lot of Republicans would probably wake up every day and go, whoa, so we're giving up? What? Why type? Get rid of your keyboard. Break your keyboard. What? Jesus. Good Lord. No. I'm only saying that in the worst case scenario, look, people always make comparisons to Weimar Germany. Do you want to know a little tidbit about Weimar Germany? Okay. Maybe Berlin had some areas that were thought of as being super progressive, but saying that all of Germany under the Weimar Republic was progressive would have been like going to Harlem in the 1920s and saying, wow, black people in America really have been socially incorporated. Berlin was largely an exception as a very urban, progressive, and generally academic space. The average opinion of the average German back in 1931 or whatever, as was the case for many European white people, would have been jaw-droppingly racist and anti-Semitic in today to us. Like, it's not like they were a bunch of progressives that all got corrupted by Nazism. Hitler was, got a controversial take I'm going to throw out here, I hope you agree, a bad guy, and his rhetoric and his actions and his policies were radical, absolutely, but he took advantage of largely pre-existing social trends. In America today, is there anti-Semitism? Yeah, and there's a lot of alt-right shit. You look at Ron DeSantis's campaign, and he was apparently hiring a bunch of like early 20s Groyper staffers or whatever. But if you look around, like America broadly today, do you think that like 40% of the American population is in a position where they could be motivated to genuine Nazi levels of fervor? I don't think so. Look, the Republicans have been losing on the trans front. The Republicans have been insanely loud and consistent on anti-trans, culture war bullshit, and it's been doing terribly for them electorally because the average Republican seems more concerned about the border, inflation, and guns than they are about some kind of abstract, transgender degeneracy. I'm not saying reactionaries don't exist. I'm saying that in terms of both their frequency and severity, the reactionary streak in this country is incomparably weaker than the other examples that you might defer to. Very often when we see these hard turns to the right, especially nowadays, what we're really seeing is a small but radical portion of the population succeed in luring the majority moderate conservative base to their side, while liberals and leftists are either weak or have been sort of like drawn apart for various reasons. And then where do they go with that? Like, where has the rising tide of fascism actually gone? In Europe, it kicked off with the Syrian refugee crisis. I ask you, where has it gone? What's happened in Italy since, Mussolini's favorite granddaughter came to power, right? What's happened in Spain with the, I'd say, reasonably well-organized right-wing movement there? Portugal, apparently, recently, like just now, elected a bunch of far-right people to power. Look at the polling data from these countries. It just doesn't add up. My theory is, on average, the far right is a lot more mobilized and militant when it comes to gaining electorally, because unlike the far left right fantasizes about the power of the state, whereas the far left fantasizes about the abolition of the state, meaning that the far left, in many cases, deliberately maintains a policy of anemic weakness when it comes to, any potential opportunity to meaningfully exercise power. So the far right is disproportionately successful, as they have been in the United States. But if the population that you're taking control of is still generally progressive, how much can you actually do? I'm not saying they can't make life worse. They can. I just don't think it's like a Hitler 2 situation. Does everyone get what I'm saying? This is why I'm just tired of people asking me, what's going to happen here? What's going to happen here? I don't know. Maybe the worst versions of stuff can happen, Maybe everything gets really, really bad. But you cannot ignore the fact that by basically all polling data, in the United States at least, there would not be some public rising tide of support. The average American wants to grill. The average American doesn't want... Even the average, suburbanite white racist doesn't want to go outside and lead a pogrom against their gay and brown neighbors. They don't. There's not a fervor for violence here. We just, there's not a bedrock for it, you know? Years of Black Lives Matter protesting under the Trump administration, and how much of that actually led to direct on the street confrontation. Don't you think if we were in a Weimar moment, there would have been a lot more like pitched gun battles, like a lot more brown shirt fighting? People want to chill. And you're right, Americans are enslaved to civility politics, the right and the left. That's the reason why nobody actually wants a revolution, because, you know, people want to stay at home and grill. People are relatively comfortable. As bad as things are, they are relatively comfortable. Literally, Polish and French rural people wanted to go around killing folk during World War II. It's just the attitudes and energy are just not the same. So maybe everything goes poorly, but I just don't want people to think that, like, that would be a turning point and everyone would just be ratting people out like you've got Jews in cellars in it's 1939. You know, I just don't think that's the case. Your fellow countrymen do have a history of kind of celebrating lynchings, though, Vosh. Yeah, that's true, and that's really, really, really bad. And there are still sundown towns in the United States. But when we talk about like a big fascist upsurge in America, we're not talking about towns with a population of 1,000 people going after strangers traveling through. You know, we're talking about like mass population centers mobilizing and pogroms. But basically, every city in the United States is relatively left-leaning. You know, depending on the area, sometimes they feel like Seattle sometimes feels like it's not just left-leaning, but like huge constituencies here are just open communists. I mean, even in places like Los Angeles, it's a difficult sell. Vosh, I understand you don't want to be alarmist, but don't you continuously tell us that they want us dead and warn us about Project 2025? I don't understand now. I could give you the opportunity to work it out yourself, but Republican politicians want you dead. Some of them want you dead directly because they themselves are monsters, blah, blah, blah. And some of them want you dead in the sense that your death is politically expedient and they're not too picky about morals. As for Project 2025, that is indeed a roadmap for undoing American democracy. None of this contradicts the point that I'm making, which is that the American electorate is not primed to be an enabler of some gigantic crackdown on minorities. You know, it's just not. I guarantee you, man, the median racist in the United States is some inbred, fat-necked white boy who thinks that MS-13 is going to come up from the southern border and kill him in North Dakota, but he has a Mexican neighbor who he thinks is one of the good ones, and they frequently grill together. That is the median American racist. Never forget the difference between the political abstraction of fearing violence at the border and the immediate physical reality of asking that white racist to lynch his non-white neighbor, like, or anything like that. I guarantee you that line, to us, to people who are like very politically educated, we can say stuff like that. We can go like, oh, well, you know, the personal is an extension of the political. So if you're like racist on these border issues, then like interpersonal racism follows, and interpersonal racism often expresses itself in the form of stochastic violence. But if you're from the perspective of that dumb racist guy, these are two massively incomparable things. They're like opposites, like they're nowhere near each other. Do you understand? Do you understand what I'm saying? To that median racist, these are two very different things. Okay, but if the police are doing the violence, they think their hands are clean. Why do you think that even with the Republican Party being as racist as it is today, it still has to frame racist policy through the lens of like, oh, we live in a meritocracy already and we support total racial equality, and the best way to achieve that is by what black people fixing their culture, so da-da-da. Even when they're persecuting non-white groups, they have to do so through the veneer of egalitarianism, right? That's because while there are plenty of racists in America, it is just not politically expedient, even for people as lunatic far right as the MAGA crowd and Trump, to express that racism in that direct a fashion. Well, they've been doing that a lot less lately. No. Official Republican policy, the way their pundits and politicians talk, even though they let it slip more often, they still have that pretense towards egalitarianism. It's pretty common. Vosh, I used to work at an oil refinery, and the operations folks I worked with were so racist, yet worked directly with my black coworkers amicably. Many such cases. Honestly, I don't think Americans are as desensitized to engaging in violence as countless internet articles may. Okay, Anybody who says Americans are desensitized to violence, you people are actually insane. We live in one of the safest eras of human history in one of the safest countries on earth. In terms of like frequency of people dying, most like people day to day have never seen a serious attempt on somebody's life. Do you have any idea how uncommon that is in a historical perspective? For basically all of human history up until very recently, you encountered death and murder and suffering all the time, and only in some countries in the modern era today do we now enjoy a period during which like the idea of watching someone die is an extraordinary and traumatizing event. You know, that is like a modern. Well, it was always been traumatizing, I guess, but like now we think of it that way. So no, Americans are not desensitized to violence, and I really don't think your average Republican wants to go out there and start bludgeoning people. Maybe a lot of them do, but I don't think most of them do. And if even a small portion of Republicans lean towards the, let's say, morally hesitant in some bad social situation, that's a significant advantage to us. Yeah, people are horrified by violence, yeah. Okay, but Vosh, how does this all work with the rising groups of white nationalist militias in the USA? There's no think about it. Think about what I've been saying. There's not a relationship between that and what I've been saying. It's LARP. No. It's not that it's LARP. It's that altogether the number of people who are a part of these groups constitutes at most 100,000 people across the entire country. Maybe 100,000. There are tens of millions of Republicans. We're talking about what the majority of the Republican voter base is like. Yeah, the more radically racist ones are going to join those militias, maybe. Yeah, there are billions of Republicans. Well, no, wet-ass Ben. What I'm saying is that the people in the Weimar Republic were way more primed to engage in or to enable violence in their communities after the rise of Hitler, for a variety of reasons. So is it actually the politicians who are the ones desensitized to violence means you personally are around the violence and you're desensitized to it. Desensitized to violence would apply to like cops and soldiers. That term gets misused massively. It's not being indifferent to suffering of others is not the same as being desensitized to violence. Those aren't the same things. So you think Project 2025 will... Stop asking me questions. I don't know. I can't see the future. The only point that I am making is that the majority of Republican voters are not ideologically aligned with most of the stuff we're afraid of the Republicans doing. There's like 50 adjacent questions. Stop. Yeah, I'm not a oracle, okay? I don't mind questions. I just mind questions that make me think like you're not listening. Chatters don't realize in Weimar there was literal street violence and clashing political paramilitaries for like years leading up to the 1933 election. There was so much different there. You can always look at Pew Research data to remind yourself what Republicans actually tend to be like. The Nazis only won 30% of the popular vote when Hitler took power. I should just ban you for not listening. I'm not talking about... First of all, there were tons of conservatives who voted for Hindenburg who were fine with Hitler as well, okay? I mean, he was appointed by Hindenburg, after all. Additionally, we're not talking about how much of a proportion. We are talking about I don't know, I keep saying it over and over. And listen, I don't give you guys foul portents of the future for you to question me when I try to say something positive. If I have a bunch of like negative news for you and then I say, okay, but here's a good thing to think about, you don't get to come back to me and go, oh, well, what about that? I know I gave you that point. You learned that from me. Not being arrogant, but in a lot of cases, this is true. So you kind of like, oh, well, what about the fact that I know I'm the one who said that? People are addicted to being negative. I think that a lot of you would really benefit from going outside. And in fact, genuinely, you know what? I'm actually committing to it. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it. Okay. I think that a majority of you would benefit from making a day trip, a road trip to go to a local small town and try to talk to some people there. I'm actually not kidding. This isn't a bit. I mean it. If you get the chance on a weekend or whatever else, go with a friend or on your own, whatever. If you can drive, take the bus. Somewhere near you, there is a relatively rural town. It might be next to a freeway. Maybe you drive out 20 minutes. You can usually find them pretty quick after leaving the center of any town. All of you are near a community like this. And that community will have bars, diners. It'll have places where people congregate. I want you to go there, okay? And I want you to just to drive out 30 minutes. Not a big deal, you know? You don't have to get a hotel room. Just saying, go out there. And I want you to go to any kind of vaguely popular bar, restaurant, whatever. And I want you to just talk to people. Be friendly to people. You only have to do it once. Maybe the people there come across kind of insufferable, or you don't get along or have much to say. That's fine. Obviously, I don't ask you to do anything that you feel compromises your safety. I don't think that's a concern for most of you. If there's some specific scenario where you think it is more of a concern, go ahead. The more rural, the better, as long as there's a decent congregation of people. Go there and talk to folks, okay? Because I want you to understand, all right? No matter how bad the politics are in the abstract and how demonic the politicians are, people are people are people. And when I said earlier that the median racist in America is some fat-necked white guy who's terrified of MS-13 coming up from the border, but also loves his Mexican neighbor, I meant it. We actually have a remarkably accepting demographic nationally. Like, America is uniquely okay with immigrants. Seriously, take a look at polling. American acceptance of people from other countries versus like any European country. Any other country in the world, we stack up really highly. And that's because part of it is American hospitality being considered like a default virtue. We are a very friendly people. Part of it is the fact that we think of ourselves as a nation of immigrants. Even racists think that, by the way. That's one of the reasons why they go that distinction between legal immigration and illegal. Even if all the immigrants are legal, this is a nation of immigrants, right? Go to a place like that. You know, I grew up in Los Angeles, and I've spent most of my life in progressive communities, but I went to university in Northern California, which was rural. Now, all of the watering holes near the university were filled with college students, so, you know, they're all young, left-leaning radicals, right? But there were plenty of places nearby, and by nearby, I mean like 10 minutes from the university, that were not young and not left-leaning. And those times that I went there were the first times that I, as an adult, had the opportunity to independently socialize with people who were on the other side of the urban-rural divide. Because up until that point, I had either been with college students or in cities, major cities. I talked to rural folks, and I knew a lot of these people were conservatives. I'm not stupid. You know, if you're at a bar in a town with 3,000 people living in it, and a guy with a white mustache and a 10-gallon hat and denim jacket and like chambray shirt and bootcut pants and boots, who has like a grizzled, you know, like 30 years of smoking voice, and you know he's kind of like amicably rough. I don't think this person is voting Democrat. You'll forgive me for not asking to confirm my suspicion, but every once in a while I'd get a chance to go there, either because I wanted a drink or I was in the area, and they're just normal people, guys. You can go to a city or a rural bar and find that on average most people are quite nice in this country. Maybe in the abstract, a lot of them politically would have very different views, but when you're looking someone in the eyes, most people are going to be nice to you. Seriously. And by the way, I don't just mean I talked about weather and baseball with them. I talked to some of these folks about being gay, you know? Because I don't give a shit, you know, whatever. What are they going to do, hate crime me? No, I went up there and, you know, I'm from the university, and they know I'm from the university because of my accent, or from my perspective, lack thereof. They know that I'm not local. So, you know, it's like, oh, you're from the university? I'm like, oh, yeah, just here for a drink, you know? You know, it's nice to get out of the gay part of the county or whatever. And then they'll laugh, and they'll be like, well, you know, I don't mind being around my own people, but it's nice to get a drink here, and da-da-da-da. I swear to God, I bet you a lot of these people don't support gay marriage, but I never didn't get a laugh. Every time. Not a condescending one. I just made a joke about it. They seemed fine. I think that in the abstract, you know, it's like a lot of them see issues like this in the same kind of systemic way that we see wealth issues, where we might not think every single person with a fat bank account is morally abhorrent, but we might politically oppose the heavy accumulation of wealth because it's not an individual issue, it's a systemic one. They think of it that way in a lot of cases. They don't have an issue with their average Mexican neighbor or their, like, you know, the gay guy they meet at the bar or whatever, but they do disagree with it, like, systemically. Now, I'm not defending that. That's bad. Opposing that systemically is bad. I'm just saying that in their minds, there is a distinction. And I think you need to understand that distinction to understand the Republican voter, because an inability to systemically think of issues like this is one of the defining characteristics of the reactionary. The inability to integrate the personal and the systemic. That's one of the big failures of their thought process, and it's one of the reasons they're so consistently hypocritical. Every abortion they've had their partner have, or like family member they helped or whatever, that was acceptable. Abortion broadly, not acceptable. Their Mexican neighbor, that's fine. Immigration from Mexico broadly, real problem. Homosexuality in schools, kids don't need to hear about that. Homosexuality from the guy they get like drinks at the bar from, whatever, man, he's just living his life, who cares? Maybe they think it's gross personally, but whatever. You understand? Have I made the point? This is the point that I'm making. It's about common humanity, you know? When I talk about Republicans being demons, and I've specified this many times, okay? I'm talking overwhelmingly about the politicians who can't get ahead without catering to the extremists, because those are the most militantly active ones. You get me? Vosh, you're 1,000% correct. So many people I know from Eastern Kentucky are like that. Yeah. So I mean this. I'm ending the segment with this. I mean this. I really genuinely mean this. If you have the ability to, go to a place like the one that I described, okay? You can look them up on your phone. You know, you can follow your Google Maps thing out past whatever highway or road, you know, leads into the rural area near you if you're in a city, or if you're not in a city, maybe you already know this. I bet a lot of people watching right now, you know, well, thank you, Benjamin. A lot of people watching right now, you guys already live in rural areas, and you already know personally that there's a lot of complexity in how humans interact. Even if politically they should be reactionary, they don't always act that way, you know? It's that divide online. When you encounter a conservative online, they are monsters. When you see a conservative online, like, the kind of conservative that you would have to be to go on Twitter and argue in favor of reactionary politics on Twitter, this is a small portion of like real Republicans. This is like a very small, this is like a selected demographic of the worst people. Everyone is worse online. That is true. Yeah. So go to a bar like that. Yeah, and you know what? I bet you if you go to a place like that, I bet you that the food is going to be so much cheaper than it would be in the city you already live in that it'll cover the gas price of getting there. You'll go there, you'll get a cocktail for $9 if they serve cocktails. Maybe they just have a brew. Cocktail for $9, which in Seattle, like that's free, basically. That's $9 cocktail. You kidding me? You'll get a burger and fries for $11. It'll be like it's 2018 with the inflation, you know? Vosh, I live in a small town in South Jersey, and pretty much most of the people here, despite having Trump paraphernalia, they are very friendly talking with, and I'm a black dude, because they don't think of themselves as racist. They may support racist policies and politicians, but that's because they've been euphemized and dog whistled to a point. Very few people ideologically believe they are racist, you know? That's very uncommon. Like, it's just not that frequent. Bougie Vosh thinks $9 a cheap drink. Save me. $9 for one drink is insane. Oh, I don't pay $9 for a cocktail in Seattle. I pay $17 for a cocktail in Seattle. Thank you. Okay? Don't talk down to my pain. I will say though, I did go to a diner just the other day, just yesterday, after a day of chores and shopping. I got some new jeans. They're wonderful. I'm wearing them out later. I'm not wearing them now because I still need to break them in. But I went to a diner, got a lot of food. The food was good, overpriced, whatever. I got a screwdriver, and the waitress, who was very lovely, she brought out a regular sized glass, and she was like, "Oh yeah, sorry, kitchen's closing soon," because they were near the end of the day. This is we didn't have the small glasses here. I put more vodka in it for you. Okay. So I take the screwdriver and I take a sip. This screwdriver was maybe, and it's a full glass, by the way, 50-50 on the OJ vodka split, okay? It was orange tinted vodka. It was like someone put a bit of bitters in there. It was insane. That must have been like 8 times the alcohol that they normally put it. Like, I don't know if it's because I was rizzing the waitress before or what, but like, holy shit. I couldn't finish it. I was going to drive later. And even after I drank it, I had to split it with the person I was with, and I had to walk around a bunch. Oh my God. So anyway, what I'm saying is you can go to a rural area, you can rizz up the waitress, and you can get probably like 6 shots worth of vodka in a drink. You drove after that? I didn't finish it. I didn't drunk drive. I took every effort not to. I didn't finish it. I split the part that I did drink, and then I walked around for 2 hours beforehand. I did the best I could. Vosh, you're completely wrong. I grew up in a small conservative town, and those people around to the core. You're speaking from very privileged POV. Thankfully, you've informed us that we don't need to listen to your perspective because nothing that I'm talking about is privilege. I grew up in Los Angeles. My experiences with rural people aren't a product of my privilege. Do you mean because I'm a white man? I make no secret of my homosexuality in these conversations. I think I'm speaking to a common truth. I'm sorry you've had a bad experience, but I don't think there's any political or moral virtue in writing off the entirety of rural America, just because of that. So can I leave this segment? Are you all going to try to go to like a dive bar or a diner in a more rural area and just talk to people? Like, are you going to like make a day of that? It'll be fun. You can have fun. No? Okay, I hope some of you do. You'll understand. Or maybe you'll have a bad experience and disprove everything I've said, whatever. I think that overwhelmingly it is a humanizing experience.